Right. I think I am back. I hope. Like I said, I would be continuing on with Discovery Tour now. Oh, I think my character model is a bit broken. So, as you can see on the passport, we only have one Alexandria tour left, and that is over there. So let's take a run for it.
Fonimo e moe anirkede. Simande dune. Ensade isti, poroti. Oda siame okse.
We need to find an exit. Oh, we have one there. I think. Maybe not. Hello again, Brendan. Let's educate ourselves. Or in John's case, let's see if the developers actually do their homework. Hello, camel.
Three things are necessary when exploring Egypt: water, a good camera, and an omnipresent voice coming from nowhere.
The Hippodrome of Alexandria.
Welcome to the Hippodrome of Alexandria.
The worst place in the game. Why aren't you a woman, Brendan?
The main hippodrome of the city was called the Legeon, in honor of Lagos, the ancestor of the Ptolemies. Alexandrians were great lovers of horse racing. They were fascinated by the rivalry of these races. The agon, as it was said at that time, that every competition brought. It was a struggle for glory.
That's a nice picture. Well, as you can see, I don't need a surgery. I just need to choose a woman in the menu. Because this is a game, not real life.
The most important chariot race was the Tethrypon. Using 4 horses with the quickest harness to the front right, the charioteer would race for 12 laps, with sharp turns at either end of the hippodrome. The victors were crowned with garlands of olive and received prize money, but the most sought-after reward was to be acclaimed by the works of poets, such as Callimachus and Pindar.
Yeah, I did that too, Paul. I haven't finished all the races. I finished like 2. Because they are ridiculous. I think you need to finish all of them in order to get... Oh, sorry. Yeah, NASCAR BC. In order to get 100% completion rate, but I can't be bothered. So darn. I'm bad at driving usually in games, but when it involves horses. I wonder if what they are speaking is modern Greek, or if they have tried to make it actual ancient Greek. You never know these things, do you?
Ye hymns that rule the lyre, what god, what hero, aye, and what man shall we loudly praise? Verily Zeus is the lord of Pisa, and Heracles established the Olympic festival, while Theron must be proclaimed by reason of his victorious chariot with its 4 horses. Theron, who is just in his regard for guests, and who is the bulwark of Akragas, the choicest flower of an auspicious line of sires, whose city towers on high, bringing wealth and glory to crown their native merits.
Cool. Now I have no idea what that poem is. Or lyric. I don't even know what it is. That was a quick one. This is a talking one. Yep. Talking and drinking. Let's choose another character then. Since Brendan can't handle that I'm playing as a woman. Quad. Let's go back with the blue bike. I like the past. Let's do that. Let's go do something that Brenda will like. I tried to play the first Watch Dogs as I played Assassin's Creed mod. It did not go well. Watch Dogs 2 is brilliant though. I really like that. I can't kill cats in this, Brendan, because they have turned off all sorts of combat.
Welcome to Wine in Ancient Egypt. When the god Horus lost his eye in a war with Seth, the ancient Egyptians believed the eye turned into a vine, and the vine's tears became wine. Early texts, dating back to 3150 BCE, contain the hieroglyph for vine. Regarded as extremely valuable, wine was highly sought after by the elite. It was also an essential part of many religious ceremonies.
Cool. I want to pick some wine, please. Can I pick some wine? No. No. Okay.
millennia-old tradition. Grape cultivation and wine production was regimented in the way typical of ancient Egyptian bureaucracy. Egyptians kept careful records of winemakers, which they clearly identified on labels. Every landowner with a modicum of self-respect usually kept a vineyard. This held particularly true in the regions of the Fayoum and the Nile Delta.
Cool. So I can't do anything here. But I want to harvest grapes and make the wine. That's too bad. I think you can get this outfit in game. And I really want it. It's probably just a epic rather than legendary.
Documentation shows that only certain craftsfolk were allowed to provide the containers required to store and transport wine. That and rigorous quality control checks established for every step of wine production shows that ancient Egyptians knew that the quality and longevity of wine could easily be affected by any number of variables, which they paid careful attention to. Egyptians had different kinds of wines, most of which ranged in quality from good to very good. The sweet shadé, to which honey had been added. The soft nejem, obtained by drying the grapes in the sun. The ma, reserved for religious ceremonies. And finally there was the peor, the mediocre rated wine, resulting from the second pressing of grapes and reserved for a less discerning palate.
Now what else stayed alive? Done 2 daily lives. Interesting. Right, where's the closest one?
Three things are necessary when exploring Egypt: water, a good camera, and an omnipresent voice coming from nowhere.
That looks kinda good, actually. Fear. Bill.
Ay, bachet en sexy. Saschotet nechesechet.
This is really nice to do. The barrow!
Take your time. I'll wait. It's not like ancient Egypt is going anywhere. Whoa.
I think I'm gonna start fast traveling actually.
Welcome to Ancient Egyptian Cultivation. The new grain types of the Ptolemaic period required a great deal of water. Farmers needed to ensure they had effective, consistent irrigation. The Nile's rising and receding waters naturally irrigated most of the crops. Areas where the Nile didn't reach, such as gardens and vegetable plots, required an irrigation tool known as the shadoof. The shadoof allowed easy transport of water from its source. It consisted of a tall wooden frame with a long pivoting pole and suspended bucket. The system could be raised and lowered with little effort. Later, a sakya, or water wheel, was invented. The sakya needed animals to turn the wheel, which rotated buckets through the water. It drew the water to an elevation of 3.5 meters and enabled a great deal of control over the irrigation process. This improvement supplied larger areas and thus resulted in larger harvests.
Cool. I think Bike does a... yeah. He touches the reeds.
The threshing process separated the grain from its husk. Workers would spread the ears on clean ground. Oxen, cows, or donkeys were then guided back and forth to trample the grain. This continuous movement worked the grain loose while preventing the animals from eating it. Unwanted chaff and straw were swept away, or gathered and added to the mud used to make bricks, to make them stronger.
Cool. I really like these pictures. I never done that, like what Bike's doing now in a field, because I'm afraid of ticks. Yeah, I saw the video of from Eurogamer, Paul. Looks pretty cool. a lot more Dark Souls.
Winnowing was the stage where workers used wooden scoops to throw ears in the air. The wind carried off the chaff, leaving the heavier seeds to fall to the ground. This action was repeated until the undesired materials were sifted out. Grain waste was mixed with manure or other organic substances to produce brick-shaped dung loaves that could be easily burned. A standardized brick size enabled Egyptians to mass-produce this byproduct and use it as a commodity.
Cool. Can't help, can I? I think so.
Transporting large amounts of grain required ships equipped to carry heavy loads. These goods were moved during the Nile's flooding season, when the river was deep enough for large ships. The transports stopped at checkpoints to accommodate customs and police controls, as well as for technical requirements and weather conditions.
Hello, doggy. Hello, lady.
Having reached Alexandria's inner harbor, the wheat was unloaded under the supervision of a civil servant in charge of wheat management. Portions were distributed to Alexandria's city market, and the remaining stockpile was either exported or stored in warehouses.
It's amazing how colorful they can make Egypt. Because when I think of Egypt, all I think of is sand. Not fields of flowers or barley.
Grain storage facilities were located across all of Egypt. Temples and institutions had large silos, while individual houses had storage sheds. In some houses, arched cellars were built into the foundations. These watertight chambers were accessible from the ground floor through a trapdoor. Royal granaries acted as the storehouse and distribution centers, and managed state payments to civil servants, soldiers, and the police. Though plastered on the inside, silos weren't completely sealed, and so remained susceptible to mice infestations.
I highly doubt they're gonna include bangles in this, Brendan, because the bangles weren't around in either ancient Egypt or 49 BC.
When the grain was ready for processing, it was poured into bowls and pounded into a coarse flour. That flour was then passed through a sieve to make it of finer quality and further ground between stones. Ancient Egyptians did not stock flour. Instead, fresh grain was portioned out each time to produce flour as it was needed.
Huh.
The sieves used by ancient Egyptians
Hi, Vicky.
were unable to filter out sand and stones. Grit often passed into the flour, causing long-term tooth abrasions among all classes of Egyptians.
Oh right, I knew that. Yeah, I was playing Lego Marvel, Vicky, but then I got tired of it, to be honest. It crashed on me once and I couldn't be bothered. So I started playing this instead.
Three things are necessary when exploring.
Let's go here. You can synchronize, even though there's nothing to synchronize.
Welcome to Bread and Beer. While the Mesopotamians invented beer, including using a straw to avoid the sediments and herbs, ancient Egyptians perfected the brewing method. Egyptian beer's
Welcome
quality
back,
was
Sean.
determined by alcohol strength,
Yawn.
color, and flavor. During the Pharaonic era, beer was the most commonly used and important alcoholic beverage. The state and temples used it, along with bread, as payment to workers, and it was included on the lists of food offerings to the gods and the deceased.
Cool. I honestly didn't know that they existed in Egypt.
Beer was the popular drink of ceremonies and festivals. The Festival of Drunkenness was even dedicated to it. Considered to be quite nutritional, beer was also significant in the day-to-day lives of ancient Egyptians. Egyptian adults and children consumed beer with all of their meals, and medical texts include hundreds of remedies that contain beer. It remained the most popular alcoholic beverage until the Roman era.
I guess, John. I'm trying to mix talking English and saying your name in Swedish, and that mucks up my brain. Kitty.
Recipes for beer varied over time and depended on the quality of the materials. Bakers and brewers typically worked alongside one another at the same workshop or house. Many families often produced the quantity appropriate to their own consumption, with better quality beers produced for festivals and other special occasions. The most basic recipe used malted cereal as the main ingredient. Fruits such as dates were added along with honey and spices.
Cool.
Once baked, bread would be crumbled into the brew to start the fermentation process. Adding grain enzymes would break down the starches, turning them into sugar and creating a thick mash.
Well, John, I can tell you that it's very clear. No loss of memory for me. Well, if you have to be drunk in order to have fun, then are you really having fun at all? Hello, kitty. Hello. Hello. Oh, he ran away. No, he's not. He's there. He's there. What are you doing, kitty? Stay still so I can pet you. I wonder if you can shoot those.
Once ready, the bread and grain mixture was compressed and then strained through a sieve with water into the mix of malt beer. Once fermented, the beer mash was transferred to large containers and again compressed by foot or with pestles.
Don't say that, John. Not the cats, the jars. Stop telling me to burn the cat, John. I will not burn the cat. You burn the cat. Okay, run away.
Once smooth, the beer was stored in pottery jars and sealed with a clay stopper. It probably couldn't be kept for long and likely had a thick, pasty appearance and texture. Very little was wasted. Leftover grains were reused to make sourdough bread or combined with the next batch of beer.
Huh.
While there are many ancient accounts for making bread, most of the knowledge known about ancient Egyptian brewing comes from an account by the alchemist Zosimus over 300 years after Cleopatra's reign. More recently, Dr. Delwyn Samuel, an archaeobotanist, has proposed alternate antique techniques to brew beer. However, experts are unable to replicate an authentic beer since not all of the techniques and ingredients used by ancient Egyptians are known yet.
Yeah, it's hard to know something that happened a long time ago.
Food was prepared on the floor until the Middle Kingdom, when cooking benches were introduced. The introduction of durum wheat improved bread quality, meaning that the upper and middle classes ate better. The poor, however, still made do with a diet consisting of a gruel made of vegetables, softened bread, or barley.
So like a vegetable porridge. Oh, I couldn't get into the pot.
Dough was kneaded by hand or foot, and when sufficiently blended, additional items were added, such as fruits, nuts, honey, and spices. To leaven the bread, they added sourdough or leaven from beer brewing. Ovens were circular or beehive-shaped and made with clay or brick. If there was no oven at all, a bread maker used the hot sand to bake flatbread, a technique still in use by some Berbers today.
But how would they... Do they just lay the bread on the sand?
Ancient Egyptians always had to fight off the omnipresent sand particles that were blown towards them. Despite their best efforts, sand regularly made its way into their food. Additionally, particles from the grain-grinding stone tools and ovens they used also contributed to attrition and prematurely worn teeth. The team tried to portray this through toothache animations and commoners sweeping sand off.
That's cool. That's a nice attention to detail, isn't it? Run away, chickens! God. That's cool, John.
Welcome to the Egyptian household. In pre-Greco-Roman culture, women were considered equal to men in many matters. They owned property, testified in court, could divorce and inherit. Until the Greeks and Romans restricted their rights, Egyptian women could take over their deceased husband's trade. Marriage contracts included mentions of allowances and items of value brought to the marriage by the woman, which would forever belong to her.
Huh. Would you look at that? No, that's not good, John. You're so backwards.
Certain professions were open only to women, such as weaving or professional mourning. while others were available to both genders, including working as servants for the rich households. Social status did have an impact, though. The higher in status, the easier it was to obtain education and access different professions.
Well, they give birth to us young, so we can't really complain that much. Professional mourner? Does that mean that they go into burials and weep? We don't love women the same way you do, Brendan. Or at least I don't.
Homes were generally composed of 3 rooms. First, there was the entrance, furnished with a small bench of brick, probably intended for a statue and protective divinity. Then there was the ceremonial room, meant to receive guests. The last room was either a bedroom or kitchen. Furniture consisted of basic chairs, chests, and storage. Tables were not used for family dinners. Instead, each individual had a small table of their own.
The house of the introverts. So you were your mother had a cesarean when she had you then, John?
Marriages were a social contract rather than a religious construct. Family was vitally important to ancient Egyptians, and children were considered a blessing from the gods. The father, mother, and their children were the nucleus of the family, and cohabitation sometimes extended to mothers-in-law, sisters, aunts, and sisters-in-law.
A marriage contract. My sister was born too soon. My mother had to have a cesarean for her. I wasn't though, I was bang on time, I think.
Status and wealth played a large role in the style and size of ancient Egyptian homes. Commoners' houses were built with sun-baked mud bricks. Wealthier homes were often painted in white and decorated with various motifs.
That's funny, Mart. I mean, it's not a good quote because it's a bad line, but it's funny.
Town officials and the rich lived in mansions with numerous rooms that were luxuriously decorated. Only temples and tombs meant to last for all eternity were built with stone.
Yeah. That's ironic, isn't it? Why are you crying about for that, Jon? Why does that make you sad?
Funeral stone inscriptions focused on the main member of a household. Encircling this person would then be a spouse, parents, and children, possibly even siblings. These stones were so structured because there were no surnames in ancient Egyptian culture. Parents and children were a sort of family tree, which allowed for the identification of the deceased.
Cool. Oh yeah. That makes sense. Right, next door. Let's go here. You maybe had if you'd stayed on, you might have better internet than you have now, but you might also have been murdered.
Welcome to Ancient Egyptian Fashions.
A loincloth and a headdress.
Learning what life was like for ancient Egyptians presents many differences, and yet also surprising similarities to how people might live today. Understanding the daily lives of regular citizens so many thousands of years ago is ultimately what connects us as human beings. Jewelry was a popular item among ancient Egyptians of all social standing. Both men and women wore earrings, rings, and bracelets. Status determined how much jewelry a person wore and what it was made of. Common folk wore pearl necklaces, simple bracelets, and leather bangles.
Yeah, we're all
Brightly
glad you're
colored
here, Jon.
earthenware and glass paste were a favorite enhancement.
I do like Egyptian jewelry. Looks so much better than the modern crap. I've seen a necklace, I think.
The jewelry of the elite was made from gold, silver, and other precious stones. Because gold never lost its shine, it was considered akin to the flesh of the gods. Wide jeweled collars were a favorite, made with rows of beads formed into patterns of animals
Oh
or
yeah, I've
flowers.
seen that.
The soft chiming sounds they made were thought to appease the gods.
You got it. It's from a tomb, right?
Though idealized, tomb paintings are a catalog of the changing fashions of ancient Egypt from the Old to the New Kingdom. Egyptians took appearance and cleanliness very seriously and were diligent about their fashion, hair, and jewelry as well as their grooming habits.
Huh. What does this do then? This is another counting, isn't it?
The fabric of ancient Egyptian clothing was almost entirely made from various grades of linen. Linen was commonly white, draped over the body, and cinched at the waist, though some garments were sewn or tailored. Wealthy men wore long tunics, loincloths, or kilts, while poor men only wore loincloths. Women wore long dresses, with differences residing in the quality of the fabric, depending on social status. Egyptians commonly went barefoot, but could also wear sandals made from papyrus fiber or leather.
Well, the app can't view links for some reason. Or it can view links like to a website, but it can't view links to an image. It's not the tablet, it's the app.
Cosmetics, including concoctions to prevent body odor and bad breath, were an integral part of everyday life for Egyptians. Used by both men and women, cosmetics were used as moisturizing ointments and sun protection as much as for beautification. Red ochre, a natural clay, was the most readily available cosmetic to tint lips and cheeks. Henna was used on nails and lips, and as hair coloring. It was also favored by richer women to decorate their palms and the soles of their feet.
They do fail a bit sometimes with environment.
Egyptians believed kohl had magical powers, wearing it as black eyeliner to protect their eyes from the sun and to prevent eye infections from particles in the flooded Nile River. A special green kohl, made from ground malachite, was worn for ceremonies and religious rituals.
Well, were you talking about this genre, or were you talking about your own thingy? Because that was a coincidence and a half. Yeah, sure you did.
Women and teenage girls wore their hair long and often braided. Wealthier women included carved combs or hairpins. The length of men's hair rarely dropped past the shoulders. They were mostly clean-shaven during the dynastic period, a trend began by the elite and soon adopted by the general populace. Queen Hatshepsut donned an artificial beard when she became pharaoh.
Yeah, I heard of that. At Shepset.
Wigs were very popular, used for special occasions or to conceal
Oh,
gray hair or baldness.
You're very smart,
They were
John.
fastened in place with beeswax. The most expensive wigs were made from human hair and reserved for royalty. Other wigs were composed of linen, wool, or animal hair.
Is this a wig? Really? Is this a sculpture of a wig? Or is it a wig that has been, like, calcified? Yeah, I know, she said.
Prepubescent children generally had their heads shaved. Young girls kept some strands intact, while young boys had a braid worn on the side.
Yeah, but it looked like it was broken. Something. No, not broken, it looked wooden.
Don't forget, you can still use photo mode at any time.
Bike in the pool. Marco. 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 No one wants to play with me. It's fine.
Welcome to Temples and Rituals of Ancient Egypt. During rituals and festivals, the god was carried on a solar barge between the areas of a temple or the temples of different cities. Funerary carvings and paintings covering thousands of years, as well as the Book of the Dead, depict the same ship and oar design. Solar barges have been uncovered near or within several pharaohs' tombs. They were
I don't
intended
think
to
so,
carry the pharaoh
Sean.
into the afterlife. Ancient Egyptians believed that Ra, the sun god, traveled the skies in a boat known as the solar barge. The solar barge was believed to cross over to mythological lands.
Yeah, it's kind of like Helios' chariot in Greek mythology.
The god Ra believed mankind was conspiring against him. He ordered Sekhmet, the lion-headed war goddess, to kill all humans. To his chagrin, Ra quickly realized that with all humans gone, there would be no one left to worship him. In order to stop the rampaging Sekhmet, beer was brewed and dyed red with pomegranate juice to resemble blood. Sekhmet drank every drop of the brew she could find, eventually passing out drunk. When she awoke, she was calmer, and her lion visage had changed into Bastet. The Festival of Drunkenness was celebrated in honor of that myth.
Isn't Bastet the cat god? Or cat goddess? Yeah, evidently, seeing that it is a cat and it is the goddess of Bastet.
Unlike the daily rituals that took place in the temple and were performed by priests, festivals allowed the entire population of the city to participate. Festivals helped mark the passing of the seasons in the agricultural calendar. In reflecting the cycles of life, festivals offered a sense of consistency and structure for the regular citizens, thus reinforcing the sense of order that pharaohs were to provide for the citizens of Egypt as part of their godly duties.
Cool.
The importance of these festivals is demonstrated by their longevity. Records show that Osiris festivals occurred for more than 2,000 years. Some festivals serve to reinforce state control and promote the king's reign. Both the Opet and Set Jubilee festivals were specifically intended to celebrate the renewal of the king's power.
Man, you're alive.
The temple hierarchy consisted of high priests, several types of priests, scribes, and servants. The high priest was known as the prophet. Some divinities had up to 4 prophets, and they were the ones to perform the most advanced and complex rituals. Egyptian priests were not confined to solely religious tasks, and in fact had crucial roles in Egypt's administration, most of which served to reaffirm the pharaoh as the proper vessel for the gods. Their focus within the temple was centered on the proper conduct of daily divine rituals, rather than as custodians of dogma or the indoctrination of individuals.
That looks like a boy rather than a man.
Scribes were custodians of the sacred sciences. Some priests were associated with the funeral rites and were considered the group with medical knowledge. The servants of the Ka were low-ranking priests who carried food and offerings in funerary rituals. Lector priests were distinguished by their ability to read, and their main duty was to recite specialized religious texts in both temple and funerary rituals.
Well, I am younger than you, John. Look, a painted statue. And that's not me being mean, that's the fact.
Priests and all the officials who served the temple worked only 3 months a year, with each period separated by a quarter of inactivity, at least within the temple compound. Each outgoing group handed over the temple and their tools to the newcomers. Only the high priesthood remained in permanent office within the temple.
Cool. I mean, not cool. Praying.
The most sacred part of the temple was referred to as Jesser Jeseru, the Holy of Holies. The most sacred inner
No need for that
sanctuary was where
language,
the
Jon.
shrine to the temple deity was located. Only priests were allowed within. Offerings were given, and rituals unseen by even the pharaoh were performed. While the team chose to allow any character access to this space in some game temples, normally it was reserved for priests alone.
Ah, I see. So that's why we can do this without them being, hey, you cannot be in here, you bastard.
Pharaohs and their priests often chose the site of these sacred temples because of some mythological connection, or an alignment
Yeah,
with the cardinal
I
points
know
and certain
that.
stars. Once selected, a foundation ritual was performed. The pharaoh was required to complete 10 steps in the ritual, which required a mix of offerings as well as specific construction techniques. Once the temple was complete, construction of the chamber containing the shrine, or naos, began.
Foundation plaque for a temple dedicated to Hathor. That's the bird, isn't it? Not the eagle or hawk, the stork? Was it an ibis? Ibis. Ibis? I can't remember.
The naos was where the god statue stood. The representation of the deity was usually in stone or wood and decorated with gold, silver, and precious stones.
Oh right,
Smaller
that's
temples
cow.
had only one naos, while larger complexes, such as the Temple of Karnak, had many chambers to honor gods, such as Amun, Ptah, and Osiris. Each statue was believed to be a receptacle for the presence or essence of the god's Ka, enabling it to take a physical form. Through the statue, the god came to the shrine to eat, drink, and communicate with the pharaoh, or with the priests standing in for the pharaoh.
What are you talking about, Paul? Is there another room? Yeah. I thought there was a passageway here. I never realized I was there in the main game, to be honest. Oh, you mean how is the
Don't
adulting
forget,
going, by the
you
way,
can still
Bart?
use photo mode at any time.
Not house. How is. That's not me correcting you in a bitchy way, by the way. That's me explaining it to myself.
Welcome to The Importance of Mummies.
The importance of mummies. Is that? No, it's not. That bands.
The first hieroglyph for embalmer appeared in pyramid texts of the Old Kingdom. It is likely that embalming was a trade that progressed alongside the evolution of ancient Egyptian funeral practices. While we still know nothing of how embalming came to be a profession, we do know that embalmers had a hierarchy, and that each embalmer specialized in a specific phase of the mummification process.
That's mean, John. You hurt my feely feels. It's all about the myrrh, no fragrance.
The mummification techniques were jealously guarded by embalmers from generation to generation. Despite their efforts, Herodotus and Diodorus discovered their methods in late antiquity, but historians were skeptical about the validity of the texts. It remained a mystery until two teams of modern medical legal scientists confirmed the process in 1994 and again in 2011.
Cool. John, should these arcs be more painted than they are?
The Uabet, meaning the pure place, was where the embalmers mummified the bodies of the deceased. Until the end of the Middle Kingdom, it was located in tents at the edges of the city due to the smell of decomposition. In the New Kingdom, however, the Uabet was located within the city limits, though still in open-air spaces. In the same way that the practices and techniques of mummification evolved, so possibly did consideration towards embalmers within ancient Egyptian society. The pharaoh had access to the most elaborate of mummification rituals. The richer citizens of Egypt also enjoyed complex embalming options, though none of them allowed for the removal of the brain or viscera. After purifying the body, embalmers injected a liquid through the rectum, sealed it, and allowed the mixture to settle. They then plunged the body into natron for up to 40 days. Once the body was dried, the seal was removed, and the entrails flowed out with the injected liquid, leaving the skin and bones of the deceased to be wrapped in linen and returned to the family for burial.
Oh. Oh. Ugh.
The least costly embalming option was for the embalmers to simply inject a product called surmaya and immerse the body in the natron for up to 40 days before handing it over to the family. For all those who could not afford any embalming process, desert burials offered a pauper's alternative to preserve the bodies of the dead.
Oh.
Egyptian civilization has always appealed to Westerners, even before the Greek and Roman invasions. As early as the Middle Ages, mummies discovered by travelers were often sent back to Europe. Curio cabinets, dating from the 16th and 17th centuries, usually included pharaonic artifacts in their collections.
Theatre concepts: four spectres draped in coats and wrapped in bandages.
The Egyptomania phenomenon was heralded by Napoleon Bonaparte's Egyptian campaign, which lasted from 1798 to 1802. The following years were marked by a resurgence of interest from rich enthusiasts and scholars who exposed Egypt to the general populace. Many research societies focusing on Egyptology were founded during those years.
That's cool.
By 1868, mass tourism began in Egypt under the aegis of the Cook Agency. The rich would indulge in leisure trips to Egypt and bring back mummies. Upon their return, they would organize evenings that consisted of unpacking mummies and removing strips of linen and amulets layer by layer. These were considered the shining cultural
that's
events of the
just
season.
wrong.
The Egyptian collections of many a museum were founded as a consequence of this mass pillaging.
Let's take this dead body and desecrate it. That's just... No, you don't do that.
Thanks to those dubious parties, the fantasy of a mummy coming back to life, seeking revenge on its defilers, was born. The mummy malediction myth has remained steady in popular culture ever since, particularly in written media and cinema.
Oh, did Bram Stoker write another novel? Maybe he wrote several novels. So that is a mummy book? Oh, that's disturbing, John. I mean, you wouldn't go to a graveyard and dig up a body and peel away that body's layers. Would you? Not without people saying that it's wrong. Oh, there's so many more in these. Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, New Kingdom, Late Period, Ptolemaic Era. Right, where do we go now? Egypt. Okay. Let's go to Giza, actually. Yeah, it's disturbing math. Oh, Brendan. Who's Kenneth Williams? Remember, I'm a kid too, Marth, so I'm sorry. I don't really care about order. Let's do the one closest to me. Okay. Did he do anything else? Because I guess Will-O-the-Wisp was a British TV series? A cartoon, rather. Yeah, no, that tells me nothing. Sorry. Remember, I'm young and I'm from a different country, so me not knowing your references is not surprising. Nope, still don't know who it is.
Welcome to Khufu's funerary complex. The Valley Temple was the first architectural component encountered when one entered the funerary complex. It was considered the official entrance of the tomb and mixed the structural components of both a temple and a portico. Khufu's Valley Temple shows evidence of a basalt pavement, letting us know where the portico portion of the structure was located. Such a partition is believed to symbolize both the subterranean and solar aspects of the afterlife.
Cool. So much of this have been destroyed or buried by the sand now, hasn't it? Well, not really, Paul, because Abba's not a gay actor from a cartoon.
Khufu's causeway ran from the floodplain up to the plateau, linking together the Valley Temple and the Mortuary Temple. A traditional causeway presented itself as a paved path, enclosed by walls and often roofed. Fragments discovered by archaeologists indicate that the walls in Khufu's causeway, one of the longest known to us, were decorated with carvings and possibly paint. Depictions show a great variety of themes. Stars on the ceiling, accompanied by scenes of battles on the walls. Other engravings depicted the creation of the complex by illustrating craftsmen at work.
As we can see here, John.
The most impressive private cemeteries of Giza are located east and west of Khufu's pyramid. The Eastern Cemetery was reserved for members of the royal family, while the Western Cemetery was mostly set aside for various court dignitaries. In both areas, private tombs, also known as mastabas, were aligned and laid out methodically in streets and avenues. This arrangement was probably an attempt at recreating the king's court for the afterlife.
But it's not entirely smooth, as you can see. Maybe we'll get an explanation why it looks like it does.
To the east of Khufu's pyramid reside three smaller constructions, the three Queen's Pyramids. A sloping passage led from the ground surface to a burial chamber, cut out of the bedrock and lined with masonry. If it seems quite certain that these monuments were intended for Queen's burials, the identity of the original occupants is hard to assess.
Well, that's not entirely true, John. Because the children part, sure. But the majority of her viewers are men. No, I don't, John. Because I'm Swedish.
The northernmost pyramid was most likely meant for Queen Hetepheres, who is believed to have been Khufu's mother. However, in 1925, her actual tomb was discovered nearby by accident. It was hidden at the bottom of a deep masonry pit in an underground chamber. Within the concealed chamber, Egyptologists discovered the most complete royal funerary equipment, dating from the Old Kingdom, though her body was missing.
Yeah, Johnny is a bit of a creep at races sometimes. I have to admit.
Within the vicinity of Khufu's pyramid, Egyptologists have uncovered 7 boat pits. The exact function of such boat-shaped pits remains unconfirmed, though one can easily conjecture that it was symbolic in nature. The boat pits being located at the eastern side of the pyramid, at the precise spot where the resuscitated king was supposed to reappear, could constitute evidence to support such an assumption. The two southern boat pits, each covered by a roof of huge limestone slabs, were discovered in 1954 by Kamal al-Malak, an Egyptian Egyptologist. Only one of them had been opened. 1,224 boat parts made of cedar wood were retrieved one by one and patiently reassembled by the master restorer Ahmed Youssef. This process took 28 years. Youssef worked by following lines of mortise and tenon joints and by stitching parts together with vegetable ropes, all in order to keep the design as authentic as possible.
As they just said, John, apart from the museum bit.
The Greek term pyramidion refers to the capstone of a pyramid or the tip of an obelisk. In ancient Egyptian, both components were called benben. This word was also used for a specific kind of food, a cone-shaped offering made of bread. The pyramidion was intended to be a miniature reproduction of the pyramid, making it equal to the monument itself in
Hello,
symbolic
Fanfox.
importance.
Thank you so much for the raid. This is my second raid ever. Hi Michael. Hello Hellscythe 15, Edius 13. Yes, all the educations. Yeah, they are nice. This is a nice raid.
Complexes.
Thank you for the host, Fanfox. I guess that is
a good example of Old Kingdom's pyramidia. It is made of limestone and has no inscriptions. Some engraved pyramidia were recovered from private funerary chapels. Their inscriptions all related to the solar symbolism of the benben.
I guess a host is automatic with your raid. Yeah, John is a real piece of work. And Mart. The rest of us are pretty nice. No, everyone here is nice if they behave themselves. John, why was the limestone were stolen from the pyramids, right? They were not eroded away. Oh God.
The pyramidia of the pyramids of Giza were never recovered. The reconstitution you see in the game is fictive, incorporating a golden pyramidion bearing inscriptions relevant to Khufu.
That's a nice touch. Yeah, that's why I thought, because it doesn't look like it has been eroded away. It looks like it had been removed. It's a nice capstone though, or pyramidia, or benben, as we now know it's called. Next door. Let's take that one. That looks like fun. When was Cairo founded, John? Because it isn't in the game. And I thought that Cairo was in the vicinity of the pyramids. Or the Giza Plateau, as it were. It is. But do you know when? Is it? Was it? Is it an ancient city? Or is it relatively new?
Welcome to Secrets of the Great Pyramid. Built around 2550 BCE, the Great Pyramid of Giza is considered one of the most iconic structures of Egypt. It is the biggest of the pyramids, and the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing. The numbers associated to the Great Pyramid of Giza are impressive. A workforce of over 20,000 people, 6 million tons of stone, and 20 years of construction. It was a massive undertaking for a pharaoh's tomb.
This is how it looks today. Still massive as fudge. Did they sweep away the sand? I see, sweep. I mean, dig away. You're not allowed to climb the pyramid anymore, aren't you? Are you? Or you never were, maybe? They have Memphis. It's right here. But I was walking in Memphis. But I thought they had prohibited climbing the pyramids now.
The construction of the Great Pyramid was also a display of power and opulence on the part of Khufu. It is part of the pharaoh's vast funerary complex, which also includes 2
Oh, sorry.
temples, 3 satellite pyramids, a causeway, and a builder's necropolis. We can guess that the intent behind the construction of these monuments was Khufu's way of declaring himself one of the most powerful pharaohs to rule a unified Egypt.
I mean, these paintings are really nice. Yeah, that's what I thought. Looks like a pretty decent climb too. I don't know if this is in 1:1 scale.
New insights into engineering and ancient Egyptian culture are still being revealed over 4,500 years later. For example, a recently unearthed papyrus offers a glimpse into the life of a tradesman at the time of the pyramid's construction. Also, a logbook belonging to a team leader during the building gives details on the craftsmen, their work schedules, and the raw materials required.
Maybe we'll
It
get
is
some
interesting to
behind
note
the
that
scenes.
by Cleopatra's time, the pyramid's celestial purpose, its construction, and the function of its mysterious inner chambers was already unclear. Today, it is only through dedicated research that we have begun to grasp some of the Great Pyramid's mysteries.
Yeah. Well, there is a lewd joke in there that I think I don't need to say, John.
The Egyptians had polished their design for centuries by the time work on the Great Pyramid began. Intended as a tomb for Khufu, the Great Pyramid's structural design has been considered to be nearly perfect by engineers and historians ever since.
Smiley face. Hello, Furby17. Welcome to the stream.
Precisely oriented north-south to the 4 cardinal points of a compass, the length of each side of the Great Pyramid at its base was 230 meters, and its original height was 147 meters. The pyramid is a mere 0.05% error away from being a perfect square.
Oh, they failed. 0.5%. Jesus. That's some feat of engineering, I must say.
In order to achieve the shape of a true pyramid, the design required many considerations in the planning phases, as well as precision during execution. It was especially critical that they control the angle of inclination on all sides at every stage of construction.
Oh, no picture. This game is beautiful, by the way, I must say. Again, I've said it countless times, but look at it!
Materials for the Great Pyramid consisted of quarried limestone blocks, weighing between 2 to 15 tons each. The methods of moving these blocks into place is still debated by architects and Egyptologists. The precision of its design in an age with only soft metal tools, as well as the enormous scale of its construction, make the Great Pyramid one of the most impressive feats of human engineering.
Agreed, lady. I mean, we couldn't do anything like this today, could we? We would do some shoddy metal work. Well, I say shoddy.
It's estimated that it took between 600,000 and 2 million blocks of stone to build the Great Pyramid. Experts calculate it would have required men to move 12 blocks every hour around the clock for 20 years to place the 2.3 million stones the monument is made of.
Yes, Furby, this is Assassin's Creed Origins. It is a mode called Discovery Tour. They have disabled all combat. You just walk around or run around, whatever. You can also ride your horse. And you have these sort of museum tours in a virtual environment that lets you know everything that the team that made the game has discovered about ancient Egypt or the pyramids, the way of life, the cities, anything. It's really educational. Boy, that's a lot of talking. You don't need to tell me how to play the game.
While the interior chambers were built with red granite from Aswan, Most of the pyramid was made from local limestone, weighing between 2 to 15 tons per block. There is debate on how the pyramid stones were moved into place. Recent research is exploring the idea that it was built around a large interior ramp.
Huh.
The recently discovered logbook confirms that the high-quality limestone of the outer casing was brought by boat across the Nile from a quarry in Tura.
Tura.
Once complete, the smooth white polished stone of the Great Pyramid would have reflected the sunlight like a beacon, earning it the name the Horizon of Khufu. Over the centuries, thieves and travelers attempted to access the Great Pyramid numerous times. Ancient writings describe details of its interior, proof that some made their way within, though who gained entrance first and when is unknown.
Herodotus?
The main entrance of the Great Pyramid is located 17 meters above ground level. It faces north, likely in order to align with the North Star. Though the entrance passageway had been discovered in antiquity, any further access into the Great Pyramid was stopped by massive vertical slabs of rock. As such, present-day visitors to the pyramid must use the robber's entrance.
Oh. So you can go inside the pyramid today. So to say.
The robber's entrance is reported to have been opened in the 9th century by Caliph al-Mamun. In search of treasure, the Caliph had his men dig their way inside the Great Pyramid. The most likely scenario is that they enlarged a corridor which had been created by tomb robbers during antiquity. As such, this is how the team can justify access to this wonder.
Yeah, that makes sense, John.
Attempts to gain entry to the Great Pyramid and uncover its potential secrets continued throughout the centuries. In the 19th century, the belief that another entry existed at the south side resulted in a hole being blasted into the pyramid's side, with no results for the damage that was done. While the search is still ongoing today to uncover more hidden rooms and passageways, conservation is the primary concern of all such efforts.
Three things are necessary when exploring Egypt: water, a good camera, and an omnipresent voice coming from nowhere.
Nowhere. Think these are inside the pyramid? Yeah. So let's go inside. I have my doubts about that, Jon. Unless she's a time traveler.
Welcome to the Great Pyramid of Giza, Upper Chambers. At the entrance of the ascending passage are 3 granite flagstones estimated to weigh up to 25 tons each. They were used to protect the Great Pyramid from thieves. Undaunted by the granite blocks, the thieves simply dug into the softer limestone around them, thus creating the robber's entrance. While in reality the robber's entrance is one single cavity which leads to both passages, in the game, the team created individual accesses to either passage. As such, in the game, one entrance leads to the ascending passage, while another leads to the descending passage.
Well, that's fair enough.
The ascending passageway of the Great Pyramid provides a direct path into the Grand Gallery and is accessed 30 meters from the entrance along the descending corridor. Both
That's funny,
corridors
Matt.
have similar dimensions and are designed with the same 26-degree incline. The ascending corridor has smooth masonry on its walls, and the layout includes many trapezoidal stones. Both the floor and ceiling of the passageway indicate that the passage was enlarged, possibly during or after the funeral, to allow workers room to move granite blocks meant to plug the corridor.
Plug.
The Grand Gallery's purpose is still debated among experts. It may have been intended to align with the stars, act as a buffer to protect the King's Chamber, or simply to facilitate the transport of the granite blocks used inside the pyramid. Access to the Queen's Chamber was at the beginning of the Grand Gallery.
Ah.
Though this room is referred to as the Queen's Chamber, it is believed that there was no queen buried here. Based on their knowledge of earlier pyramids, Egyptologists believe it was more likely intended as the king's serdab, a chamber meant to contain the Ka statue, which would in turn house the king's spirit.
Ah.
Situated exactly within the pyramid's center, on the east-west axis of the pyramid, the chamber has a vaulted ceiling and measures 5.7 by 5.2 meters. In the eastern wall, there is a niche tucked away in a small corbelled archway, which may have originally held the Ka statue. Behind this niche is another smaller hole, possibly dug out by thieves in search of further treasure.
That's cool. Can't go in there though.
In the 19th century, two shafts were found running through the north and south walls. They each run in a horizontal line for 2 meters before sloping upward, and both are closed off with limestone blocks fitted with copper handles. Whether they were intended as ventilation shafts for workers or a celestial connection for the pharaoh's spirit is unconfirmed.
Well, if you want a mysterious shaft, Kappa.
A recent scan of the room
Kappa, Kappa.
indicated the presence of an unknown cavity hidden behind the north face of the walls over the descending corridor. Further investigation is still ongoing to ascertain the nature of the anomaly, so as to avoid risking damage to the monument.
Well, modern equipment should be able to probe the cavity and make a virtual picture of the anomaly. I can't believe I just said probe the cavity. Thank goodness that everyone has forgotten that I have a quote command.
Khufu's architects were possibly influenced by earlier rhomboidal pyramids when designing the gallery.
Hello, Dougie.
It is the longest corbel vault ever built, measuring 47 meters long and 8.6 meters high. The walls were made to taper inward, allowing for better distribution of weight. As a result, the ceiling measures just over a meter wide at its highest point. Though this construction technique is present in other pyramids, few have the same precision and stability. While the space is visually dramatic, the gallery seemed to serve a practical function, though what exactly remains uncertain. Still, the wall design was undoubtedly meant to contribute to the stability of the structure, and its floor may have helped workers move the materials. A channel runs along the middle of the room. A movable floor originally rested in this central recess. The raised benches on either side are equipped with slots that may have been used to help position the granite blocking stones.
No, it doesn't automatically light it, I think.
At the end of the Grand Gallery is the entrance to the antechamber leading to the King's Chamber. Directly above, there is another narrower horizontal passage that connects to the top of the King's Chamber and allow the workers access to the weight relief rooms. The far end of the Grand Gallery leads to a small antechamber with a portcullis, preventing access to the King's Chamber. The portcullis was composed of 3 separate granite slabs. They were designed to be lowered into place and seal the chamber after the burial of the king. The grooves dug out to hold the slabs in place are still clearly visible to this day. The elaborate locking system was composed of a series of grooves for the ropes and pulleys that dropped the stones into place like the notches on a key.
Yeah, this is a educational mode, Dougie, called Discovery Tour. It's free, everyone can get it. You can even get it as a standalone on PC. Apparently. You don't need to have the game in order to get this mode. But then it costs like $20, I think, or £20.
For the purposes of the game, the team elected to remove the portcullis slabs in order to grant the player access to the King's Chamber. In reality, workers would have backed out of the room after the funeral, lowering each slab into place behind them one at a time. Each of the 3 stones were smashed by looters centuries later, and evidence of their break-in is still evident.
Why are you crying now, John?
The King's Chamber is built entirely out of red granite. The King's Chamber measures 5.8 meters in height. It has an imposing cover of 5 stacked levels above, with granite beams weighing 25 to 40 tons each. The uppermost level is surmounted by a vault of stones, arranged in chevrons to bear the enormous structural load.
Aww. Dougie.
As in the Queen's Chamber, 2 shafts extend out from the room towards the north and south faces of the pyramid. They measure nearly 64 meters until they are blocked by copper-handled granite plugs. Some experts in the culture of the Old Kingdom believe that the shafts were thought to lead the king's soul to the stars, with the incarnation of the pharaoh as the god Ra, represented by the northern well, and the god Horus by the southern well.
Cool.
There is a granite sarcophagus at the west end of the room, but it is the concealed construction inscriptions left by workmen on the roof's stones which verify this as the resting place of Khufu. The sarcophagus was recorded as being empty when it was discovered, and its design indicates that there was once a lid in place. It's possible that this sarcophagus is only a cenotaph in memory of the pharaoh, but was never actually meant to receive the body.
Yeah. He did kill the alien that posed as Ra.
Khufu's mummy was never found. It is hoped that as of yet undiscovered hidden rooms and shafts of the pyramid may provide an answer as to its location.
Now what's this?
Welcome to Jean-Pierre
God.
Houdin's Theories. The team wanted to provide players with a sense of exploration and discovery, particularly within the Great Pyramid. As such, a decision was made that the internal design of the monument in the game would reflect Jean-Pierre Houdin's theories. While the antechambers of the King's Tomb have yet to be discovered, Houdin posits that this is merely due to a unique design, placing the pharaoh's tomb at the center of the pyramid. The entire tour you are about to take was designed along Houdin's hypotheses.
Cool. I mean, they need to sort out their treasure rooms. Who throws plates and stuff like this? Really? Yeah, pick this up. I can't. Damn it.
While respecting Houdin's hypothesis as to the general layout of the antechambers, the team wanted the contents to enhance the game experience. In regular royal tombs, The antechambers were filled with all the material goods needed by the pharaoh in the
Right.
afterlife.
Bye, Mart.
To support the feelings of discovery and awe, the art team created
Thank
a
you for
unique
coming.
and fantastical treasure in this second antechamber.
Are you ashamed that you know about that, John?
Houdin theorized that the ascending corridor and the Great Gallery were used by the workers to haul hoist the heavy beams above the king's chamber. He called it the service circuit. The corridor you are in now was created by the team following Houdin's theory and is referred to as the Noble Circuit. It is through this corridor that the wooden sarcophagus containing the pharaoh's mummy would have been transported to its final resting chamber.
Alrighty then.
With this structure in mind, one can easily assume that the pyramid's entrance would have been connected to the two antechambers. Modern research has revealed that a cavity might be located behind the north face chevrons of the pyramid. As such, the team chose to create this area for the player to explore. Here is where Houdin believes that the priests and nobles would have exited the pyramid after the burial ceremony.
I honestly, Dougie, I would love for future Assassin's Creed games to have this exact mode in them. Because it's not only educational for me, it also helps show off all the work that has gone into making the game. That's just awesome.
Many theories regarding the construction of the Great Pyramid rely on the
Mott's
usage
gone,
of
Dougie.
external ramps. However, Houdin believes an external ramp would have been too steep for the upper portion of the pyramid. This is why he posits that there were two ramps. An external ramp for about half of the height of the pyramid, which then became an internal ramp for the second half.
Yeah, John. Don't let Mart hear you say that.
Houdin's theory states that this internal ramp followed the sides of the pyramid in an ascending spiral pattern. A notch discovered in the edge of the Great Pyramid, known as Bob's Room, seems to support this theory.
Bob's room? Who
Located
the hell
at
is
the
Bob?
corners of each edge of the pyramid, these large rooms would have allowed workers to turn the stone by 90 degrees, allowing them to continue the ascent. The team chose to create rooms such as this one, bringing Houdin's hypothesis to life.
Oh, don't you start, Dougie. No, it's not bullshit, John. It's a theory, a hypothesis. It's not like you know how they built the pyramids.
This long corridor was the first section of the ascending internal ramp. Through it, the blocks used to build the Great Pyramid would have been carefully moved upward and then turned at each edge of the pyramid in order to continue their ascent. Though the team only created the main ramp for the game, Houdet posits that this ramp had two
Yeah,
ramps,
Femfox,
allowing
that's
workers
me,
to
sorry.
return safely to the bottom
I'll turn the
thanks
sound
to
off.
an additional corbelled upper section.
I didn't know that it was that audible, to be honest. Yeah, I've had that too. I was watching a stream and I think it was Lard. And he kept getting Discord messages and I didn't know if it was me or... Why am I a butthole now, John? Can't just call me that and without explanations.
According to Houdet, the start of the inner ramp was located at the base of the southeastern face of the pyramid. This location would have been the junction point of the external and internal ramps. Below us, workers would have built the lower part of the pyramid with the external ramp before eventually switching to the internal ramp for the middle and upper sections of the pyramid. At that time in the process, they could have reused the material of the external ramp to fill the center of the pyramid, hauling the stones in through the internal ramp.
That's cool. Yeah, that you are, John. That you are. Only that you are not married and I'm not, and I'm still single. So it's not as weird.
You can use a mount to cover long distances quickly.
There's another tour. Yeah, exactly, John. There's another tour inside the pyramid I'm gonna go to. Are those hyenas? They totally are. Oh, no. We're going by the robber's entrance. I totally forgot where it is. Here it is.
Welcome to the Great Pyramid, Subterranean Chamber. From the original entrance of the Great Pyramid, there is a passage leading to the subterranean chamber. Its walls were carved out of the existing rock of the plateau and then covered in a fine, unmarked limestone. The descending passage has a steep 26-degree downward slope. Narrow and with a low ceiling, this pathway is long and challenging. While the original passage was 145 meters long, the team reduced its length and made it both wider and higher. The main focus of the work in reproducing the location was centered upon preserving the unique claustrophobic environment of the Great Pyramid, while still allowing for a smooth game navigation.
That's fair enough.
The well shaft was a 58-meter vertical passage that connected the descending corridor to the grand gallery above. An adjacent grotto may have originally been a small natural well in the bedrock that was enlarged during the tunneling. Whether the grotto was intended for another purpose is uncertain. There is much speculation over the purpose of the well shaft. One theory is that the channel was cut or enlarged to supply air to workers in the descending passage. Another is that it was meant to provide an exit route once the work was done in the heart of the pyramid. Without the well shaft, workers would have been trapped inside forever when the grand gallery was sealed. The opening at the bottom of the well shaft was most likely sealed by exiting workers to camouflage the passageway.
This is someone who visited the well shaft, apparently.
There is a subterranean chamber at the end of the descending corridor, 30 meters below the Giza Plateau surface. Dug directly into the bedrock, the space is wide with a ceiling 3 meters in height. Its floors and walls are rough and uneven, indicating that it was never completed. At the south end of the room, there is another narrow corridor, similar to the others, though it abruptly ends after roughly 20 meters. The chamber also contains an 11-meter pit near the east side. It's unclear what this may have been used for. In the game, this well leads to a fictive underground complex containing key game-related mysteries.
Oh, yeah, right.
The subterranean chamber's original purpose remains a mystery. One popular theory is that it was originally meant to be Khufu's burial chamber, but the pharaoh changed his mind, preferring to be buried higher up in the pyramid, which would explain the chamber's unfinished state.
So... that's that tour done. Do you have a problem with Khufu, John? It's almost 6 o'clock here, and I've been doing this for almost 2.5 hours. So what I'm thinking is that I'm gonna climb to the top of the pyramid, and you are gonna shut up, and then I'm gonna end the stream.
So many tours, so little time.
Indeed. I wouldn't in real life, John. Yawn. No. Fudge. Oh no.
Three things are necessary when exploring Egypt: water, a good camera, and an omnipresent voice coming from nowhere.
Ta-da! And there we have a beautiful picture. And this is where we're gonna end the stream. Thank you everybody for coming along, chatting with me and having a great learning experience. Thank you FemFox for the raid, it is greatly appreciated. If you're new and haven't already and want to see me play more of this or any of the other games that I play, drop a follow. It is greatly appreciated. We are gonna host No. That we're gonna host Rage. So thank you guys for coming, and I will see you later. But for now, it is bye.